Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is February the 2nd here at 3 p.m. The North Affair podcast, Conversation Without Barriers. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. A new start to a week. Cold temperatures. The prediction of early spring. Lucy the Lobster, Wyerton Willie, predicting an early spring. Down in Punky Doodle Corners in Pennsylvania, predicts 6 more weeks of winter. Well, this is the halfway mark of the solstice winter. 6 more weeks of winter, regardless if a little critter predicts early spring or not. But today, we're going to talk about winter survival, homelessness, and the cold. I don't like my cursor. So today, we'll talk about what winter means when you're homeless, how winter impacts shelters, outreach teams, the front lines in the cold, the system under pressure, what actually saved lives. It's the kind of cold that doesn't just sting, it gets ambitious. It slips through seams, finds skin, and stays. The winter cold isn't background noise, it's a countdown. And if you're indoors, you might complain about your commute, your heating bill, the way the air hurts your face for a second before you duck into a warm place. But you don't have a warm place to duck into. Winter isn't a season, it's a threat that shows up every single night. Today, we're talking about what winter means when you're homeless, what changes on the street, what happens inside shelters, why outreach workers become their lifelines, and what actually keeps people alive when the system is under pressure. We're going to go into the Pacifics, not in a sensational way, just because sympathy doesn't keep anybody warm. Well, let's start with the basics. The people, homeless, and they picture somebody sleeping on a sidewalk. That can be true, but winter reshuffles everything. People sleep in cars, in tents, in abandoned buildings, in stairwells, in transit stations, in spots that are hidden because hidden feels safer. And hidden can also mean harder to find when something goes wrong. Winter pushes people into tighter, more dangerous corners. If you're outdoors, you're thinking in hours. How long until my hands stop working? How long until my socks are wet? How long until my sleeping bag loses its fighting power? How long can I keep moving before exhaustion wins? It's not just the headline hypothermia. It's also the injuries that start small. A blister that becomes an infection because you can't keep it clean. Frost nip that becomes frostbite because you can't get warm enough and stay warm long enough. A cough that turns into pneumonia because you can't reset. Or there's also the mental load. Try to imagine making decisions all day, where to go, what to avoid, how not to get your stuff stolen. And then the sun sets, and you realize you're about to go to that coldest part again. people have never lived it sometimes. And why, and why don't they just go to a shelter? Like it's a magic door. You walk through and the problem disappears. So let's talk about shelters in winter because they matter and they're complicated. When the shelters get full and they get full fast. Places that run at capacity. And in normal months, well, they are full, but not at overcapacity. Where the common areas turn into sleeping areas, staff gets stretched, tensions rise. And when a shelter is packed, the environment changes because in close quarters means more conflict, potential more respiratory illness, less privacy, more noise for someone already living in survival mode. That could feel impossible. There's also the rules, and those rules don't always fit everybody's reality. Curfews and requirements in some places, limits on possessions. Someone with a big backpack, everything they own, might be told they can't come in. Someone with a partner might be told they have to separate. Someone be turned away from shelters that are not set up for everyone. Families, single adults, youth, seniors. Siloed into one place, and in someone dealing with a mental health crisis or an addiction. Or shelter that's less like safely and more like a place where you might lose control. None of that means shelters are bad. It means winter turns every weakness in the system into something you can't ignore. Also, shelters is not the same as housing. Shelter is staying alive tonight. Housing is being able to plan for tomorrow. And winter is that yells that distinction, that full volume. Now let's shift to the people who beat winter head on, outreach teams. Outreach is one of those words that can sound gentle, like handing out flyers. Outreach, walking into streets and encampments at night in freezing temperatures, trying to convince someone to come inside before the body quits on them. They're out there with supplies, blankets, warmers, socks, water, sometimes hot drinks. But the most important thing that they bring is relationship. They often consist of contact someone. And it's not as simple. And here's, a lot of the time it isn't a bed or the available option. Might be across town, or it might be a place a person had a bad experience with outreach workers. The outreach workers, they're doing 100 micro negotiations. Will you take a warmer sleeping bag? Can I check your hands? Do you know what the temperature is going to be tonight? Can I get you to a warmer center for a few hours? And sometimes it's repeated work. You see the same person every single day. You offer help every day. They say no every day. But the relationship still matters because the day they say yes might be the day it saves them. There's also the reality that outreach teams can't force anyone into safety. Adults have autonomy, even when the decision looks dangerous from the outside, which is hard for the public to accept. People want a clean solution. Scoop everyone up, bring them inside, problem solved. But the real world is messy. Trust is options, and the options are limited. Trauma is real, and there's the system itself under pressure. Winter is when the entire safety net gets stress tested. emergency shelters, transitional programs, hospitals, detox, mental health services, transportation, even simple ability to answer a hotline call quickly. It's like traffic during a winter storm. Everyone's moving slower. Visibility is worse. The margin for error disappears, and more are on the road than usual. As big as that, homeless looks the same all year. It doesn't matter when it's winter. Winter increases urgency. People who are barely managing and that the thin layers of stability. Someone in a vehicle might have it break down. Someone surfacing can get cut off. A job that was seasonal ends. Suddenly more people are asking for help at the exact same time. Help is harder to deliver. And when symptoms get overwhelmed, the outcomes get harsher, longer waits, or people discharged back to the street. More missed connections. Someone willing to take a bed, but the transportation doesn't work out, or the intake closes at a certain time, or the person can't get there safely. Meanwhile, public attention spikes during cold snaps. Everyone shares posts. We have to do something, but the cold snaps don't last as winter does, and the temperatures goes up for 3 days, and people's emotionally move on. Even through the risk, they stay wet, cold, in the wind. Next keeps dipping below a safe levels. And exhaustion, well, the exhaustion stacks. So what actually saves lives? That sounds good. Not what it looks like in a press conference. What works fast? Access to warmer indoor space, warming centers with hours that match reality, meetings, nights, weekends, locations near where people already are, and staff who know how to de-escalate, not escalate. And transportation, this sounds basic. But if someone has to walk 40 minutes in sub-freezing weather to reach help, that help is theoretical. Supplies that match the conditions. Dry socks, insulated layers, sleeping bags rated for the actual temperatures, hand warmers, tarps, foot care kits. And not just once, but replacements because stuff gets stolen or worn out. Outreach that's consistent and coordinated. The difference between a one-time drop, a team that knows the area, knows the people. Those who hasn't seen or been seen in a while, that difference can be a life or death. Then the behavioral health access. That doesn't require someone to be perfectly stable to qualify when it's freezing. You don't have time for a maze. You need a low bar care quick evaluations, clear pathways, actual follow throughs, housing, real housing, because the only permanent solution to winter homelessness is ending homelessness. People can argue policy all day, but the physics are simple. Walls and heat beat wind and ice. A key beats a blanket, and an address beats a nightly gamble. There's also something else that saves lives, and it's harder to quantify: dignity. When a person is treated like a problem, they learn to avoid the people who claim they're offering help. When a person is treated like a person, they're more likely to stay connected long enough to accept support. So, what can a listener do? If you're not running a shelter or doing outreach, it can feel like you're powerless, but you're not powerless. But you have to be realistic. You can support local groups that already do outreach. Money helps because it buys exactly what's needed. You can donate items that specifically they're asking for, not random leftovers. You can learn where warming centers are and share accurate information. You can also adjust how you respond when you see someone outside, and not every moment calls for a direct interaction, but you can treat the situation with seriousness. If someone is in medical distress, you can call the emergency services. If you're in a position to offer a hot drink or point to a nearby warming location, that can matter. You can vote like winter is real because it is budgets are moral documents, and that budgets are moral documents. And the number of beds, the number of outreach, the number of supportive housing units, that's all decided by people who assume someone else will handle it. But before we close, I want you to sit with one uncomfortable truth. Winter doesn't create homelessness, but it punishes it. You have a home, winter is inconvenient. If you don't, winter is relentless. It's waking up cold and going to sleep colder. Just trying to keep your fingers working so you can zip a coat. Is losing feeling in your toes and telling yourself it's temporary. It's chosen between a crowded room that scares you and an empty corner that might kill you. And here's the hard edge of it: people die outside in modern cities, not because we don't know how to prevent it, but because prevention requires priorities. It requires enough beds, enough staff, enough housing, and to follow enough and to design services around real human behavior instead of ideal behavior. When someone freezes to death, it's easy to call it a tragedy and move on, but winter comes every year on schedule. That's not a surprise. That's a test. And what we find, what we build, what we tolerate, those are the answers. And if you're listening somewhere warm right now, let the warmth mean something. That guilt, that pity, something practical. Because out there, the cold is doing what it always does. The question is whether will we too. See, being out here and just talking um, about the shelters and the outreach in the cold winter. Last night, the temperatures dipped down to 20 below zero with a wind chill factor of minus 30 here in the city of London, Ontario. That's not uncommon for this time of year. Outreach is a safety net. It is part of the hub system. And it plays a really important role because it can save lives. The other week, or maybe a week and a half, a bit, four members of the city council that included the deputy mayor. And like I said the other day on this podcast, they wanted to create one central hub. And the location that they were talking about, it is a daytime hub. It is a place where people can get supplies, they can get a hot drink, they can just sit and warm for a few minutes, and then they have to leave, and then other people can come in. And it's only set for so many hours a day. It's not a nighttime shelter. It's not a nighttime warming. It's not a nighttime warming space. But the problem is that what about those people outside of that circle? And those are the people that are in a distance that they would have to trek quite a ways. Transportation couldn't be provided because who's going to provide that? The city transit's not going to provide that. School bus services are not going to provide that. So they wanted to take $1.5 million away from the outreach program and make this into a centralized location. Place is not big enough. It wouldn't be have enough staff. They run out of supplies as quick as the doors opens in the mornings and closes in the afternoon. And people may think, oh, okay, well, it's winter. It's harsher. The challenges are more extreme. Summertime, uh, people out there might thinking, oh, it's easier for them. Extreme heat, days are longer, days are hotter. The survival, trying to survive in the winter and the summer are basically the same. They face the same challenges. That doesn't change. I advocate out here because I think it's important to tell the story. I once, many years ago, it was back in 2015 and 2016, I volunteered at a homeless shelter. I volunteered at a hub that they offered snacks and drinks and coffees and sandwiches at lunchtime. I volunteered at a hub, that's very same hub that groups around the city, church groups and other groups, they on a Friday, they would bring a meal for the homeless. My job took me away from that. But it's important to find out what's in your community. Homeless isn't centralized. Homeless is worldwide, from North America to Europe and beyond. Is what you can do in your city, in your communities. Look for who's involved. Where are these agencies? How can I help? What do you need in donations? Whether it's like, North America, it's not always summertime. It's wintertime right now. Yes, the part of the United States, the southern part of the United States, you have relatively nice weather, sunshine, whatever. Doesn't change the fact. Doesn't change the fact that our people are home, and it doesn't change the fact what struggles they're facing. It's the supports that they need. And in places when you come up into even into the northern parts of the United States where it is cold and it is winter, find out where all these hubs are, where all these warming centers are. If you see people in distress that requires medical attention immediately, well, you know to call the emergency. The other day, I went and got a coffee at my local coffee shop. I parked because I park all the time. I don't like going through the drive-throughs. I parked my car, and as I was walking towards the entrance, an individual came up to me. Didn't ask for money. They asked me if I could get them something to eat. And they said to me, "If I see you again, I won't bother you again." And my reply is that if you see me again, you can bother me again because you're not bothering me. I asked them what they wanted, and they said, "Can I please come inside with you and order it?" Because she knew exactly what she wanted. So I did, and that might have been the only meal that she would get for the day. She got a hot coffee and a breakfast sandwich. Just little things, just little things like that, just to help somebody. I haven't seen him since. I go to the same location every single morning. And that was probably about a week and a half ago. I don't know what happened to the individual. Because I know that night it got extremely cold. That person made their way to a hub. Did they open up a warming center for the night? I don't know. But small towns, medium sized cities, large cities are struggling the same way when it comes to helping those who are homeless. I read a news article the other day, and I think I mentioned it on my last show, that a small town will transfer somebody to a mid-sized city like London and tell them that they have the supports that you need. Pay for their cab fare. It was a $241 cab fare that they paid for, not the person coming here. $241 cab fare. Only to find out it wasn't the services. He needed shelter. He needed to be in a shelter. Somehow moved on to another town and then somehow got to another mid-sized city where he did find some support. It seems like the small towns, the mid-sized cities, and the big cities were disconnected. We're disconnected from information because information matters. Because if you pick up the phone and you call a shelter or call around to shelters, that small town then would have had to find other alternatives or do something because they would have found out that London had nothing for that individual. Somehow we have to figure out how are we going to get the small towns, mid-sized cities, and big cities connected to one another for communication. because that really matters too. The struggles and the survival, in the hopes that you do find a location where they can help you, and they will have a bed for you, for the night, but the reminder is that you have to be back at the location at a certain time. If you miss that deadline, then we don't have a mat for you. Then you're gonna have to look for other alternatives. See, when temperatures are reaching, a daytime high of 5 below, -5, London doesn't open up any extra warming centers. They wait until the temperature drops well below -15. One night the storm hit, and the people out there, the people who are out on the streets, they're figured, "Okay, this hub is gonna open now." So they go to the hub that they open only when the temperatures dip, below -15, only to find the doors shuttered. Agencies calling the city, begging them to open up that warming center for the night. It only holds I think it only holds, um, 40 people. That shouldn't have happened. That warming center should have been open when they arrived. And that's how disconnected. It seems that the city and the hubs are disconnected. The hubs should not have had to have called the city to say, "It's storming outside. It's -18, and you don't have this warming center open." They should not have had to have done that. And then to think that they can open one central hub in one location, take money from the outreach program to operate that one central hub, and those people outside of that circle, those are the ones that are in tent encampments, those are the ones that are sleeping in vacant buildings, those are the ones that are sleeping under bridges. Those are places where most people don't even see where they are, but the outreach teams do know where they are because they go out there every single day, every single night. And to think that the city would even think about transferring that $1.5 million away from the outreach and put it in one central location was just it was so frustrating. It was so frustrating, not just for the people who are operating these hub systems, the people who are operating shelters or whatever the case may be, people like me, a citizen, that it prompted me to write a letter to the mayor. So I did. And of course, before any changes would be made, even before they decided that they're going to transfer this $1.5 million to one central trust, it had to go before a committee. It just wasn't just going to happen. Just because 4 people on city council decide that, "Hey, we're gonna take this $1.5 million, this is a Justin, and we'll just take it from the outreach and put it to one centralized hub." It doesn't get passed that way. It has to go before a committee that went before a committee, and they voted 4 to 1 of keeping the outreach because they understood how important the outreach is, and that one centralized hub was not going to work. So this $1.5 million stays with outreach. Whether my letter played a role, that's irrelevant. They were gonna have that vote anyways. They had to. I felt better that the outreach was gonna continue. And people here, here, across Ontario, this is a municipal election year. Who we're gonna vote for the next, administration at City Hall, councils, mayor. The mayor made his first city address for 2026, and it almost sounded like a campaign speech. Campaign speeches. What are they gonna promise? What promises can they keep? Don't make promises you can't keep. Because we have to have real concrete real concrete ideas that can keep moving forward and not standing still. London has over 7,000 people and families waiting for rent to gear income, 2,000 plus homeless. That's a mid-size city. I'd have to check into what the wait list is in the city of Toronto, a population of 3 million plus. Have to look into to see how close I can get to what their homeless population is, and I'm thinking it's probably 10 to 12,000 people that are homeless just in the city of Toronto alone. 85,000 people in the province. I know that number because I checked it. Just in the province of Ontario, the largest, most populous province in all of Canada. 85,000 people are homeless. From 2021 to 2025, that was I think they said it was about a 48% jump in homelessness between 2021 and the end of the fiscal year of 2025. Yeah, there are projects going on in the city. They're restoring older buildings for um, housing with supports, but they take a bit to come on time because they have to do the entire renovation of those older buildings. They all have to be updated to uh, to the current requirements. Another problem that the city is facing. Look, they were supposed to have these small huts. I think there was supposed to be 60 of them. So 20 going up up first, and then the next 20, and then the next 20. Well, they don't even have the first 20 done. And now this is the beginning of February. And they're on parcels of land that are slated for industrial. So we know that those little huts there are not going to stay because at some point in time, well, they're going to build industrial there. But they don't even have the first 20 up and operational. Some of it was because of weather. See, London didn't have a winter response program last year. And what they have this year compared to last year, nothing. So they had from last spring when that winter ended, they had from last spring all the way up to the fall to decide what they were going to do for a winter response plan. And they can't even put together 20 of these micro units. The logistics didn't work out for them somehow. And by the time they get even this first 20 up, the second 20 up, and the third 20 up, it's going to be March. It's going to be springtime. And then that field that they have all these micro huts in, all that is just going to turn to mud. And they may as well not even have them now. But you can't plan that way. I don't know who sits on the planning committees. It's like, give me a break. Now that what I want to do now, and because I work evenings, I'm going to be able to, send out emails, reach out to the shelters, reach out to, the other hubs, people who are working every single day, every single day, every day, to go out and talk to them and bring back what they have to say and even get them as a guest on the show. It's going to take a lot of emails. It's going to take a lot of back and forth meetings, even to get one show set up with a guest speaker. But I think that I really believe that, and I think that that can happen. So they can give you a better insight, what is actually going on there. What are the hubs doing? What do they do? Each hub has its purpose. And other things like, how can we move forward? What is needed to move forward? What kind of plan will help us take another step? Because we are taking steps. We're taking one step at a time. And each of those steps really matter. And then we have to figure out what's working and what's not working. And we'll have to adjust those. It's not going to be easy. There are going to be challenges. There's going to be a lot of convincing. And that's to the city officials. And that's to the provincial government and federal government. Because those three have to work together: the provincial, the municipal, and the federal. And the advocacy can move the needle a little bit at a time. We waited too long. I grew up in the city. I grew up in the city, born and raised in the city. And I've seen the homeless grow year after year after year after decade after decade to where the point it is today that it is in a crisis. It was once upon a time where if someone ended up in a shelter, you were there maybe 12, maybe 24 hours, and then you were moved into housing. Now that's not even possible. You didn't have all these hubs all over the areas where people needed to go to these hubs. Back when I was growing up in the city, the Unity Project homeless shelter didn't even exist. They had a men's mission, they had the women's shelter, and that was about it. But they were able to move them, to transition them into the next stage. Second stage housing for mothers and their kids. And they didn't stay in that second stage housing for very long because the housing was available and they could just keep moving. So that whole chain just kept moving. Now we got a broken link, and now that cannot move any further. It is stopped. People who are in, the family shelters and in the women's shelters, they can't move to second stage housing. Second stage housing can't move into housing because there isn't any. Shelters and other homeless people can't move from those shelters into housing because there isn't any. I feel like it was a manufactured crisis. Back in the 80s, in the mid 80s, in the mid 90s, the federal government opted out of housing, passed the responsible down to the provincial government. The provincial government opted out of housing, passed it down to the municipalities. In 1995-96, the Harris government slashed 17,000 affordable homes, paid for shovel ready. It was the biggest slash funding in Canadian history. 17,000 affordable homes. Cut, gone. Is that not manufacturing a crisis? I don't know what is. And we haven't built co ops and we haven't built social housing in decades. And what's coming online now? Big high rises, condos, market rate housing. London missed a huge opportunity. They missed a huge opportunity on a large parcel of land. And what they're building there is profit. The the idea when we're building homes, you know, parcel of land, one lot, one house. That's all from the 50s. Even after the wartime, they were building townhomes. They were building co-ops. They were building all these houses. Post-war, they built 150,000 plus homes, all types of homes. But these parcels of land that get set up for single family dwellings, we can use the same parcels of land to build a co-op on, to build a social housing on. Shared the cost of that parcel of land. but we're not doing that. I don't know what to I don't know what I mean, a lot of things need to be changed. Of course, policies need to be changed, but they can only be changed when voices are heard. The book that I was reading called Our Crumbling Foundation. It's got 37 recommendations at the end of the book. Now, the seventh recommendation was end single family zoning. Municipal governments with growing population and high prices, most Canadian cities could end the dominance of single family homes, changing local laws to allow townhomes, multiplexes to be built on the same lots that are now reserved for single family homes would allow builders to add more homes as older houses are torn down or replaced or their new buildings. Add for even greater density of new developments if affordability commitments are made. And this strategy has been adopted in Portland, Oregon, so that 4 units are allowed on every lot, but up to 6 are permitted if half the units are designed as affordable. And the monopoly in single family zoning. That's policy. That policy needs to change. I talk to friends, a couple of them are in real estate. They sell. And we're talking a little bit about development. And one said, well, if we put, co-ops, on the same lots, well, then it'll drive down the prices of those homes. And I said, well, that's not true. I said, housing, market housing is market driven. Non-market housing is not market driven. It's not going to change the value of your home. Another point that I made was a location where there is Middlesex housing and housing, market housing directly behind it. That when those market housings were bought back in the 70s, because they're market driven, the price of their home went up. Those houses that were built in the 70s or maybe even in the 80s, those houses are now worth over $600,000. So by having social housing in that same location, did it drive down the cost of their homes? No, it did not. So whether you put a co-op on the same plot of land, or you put social housing on the same plot of land, or both on the same plot of land, is not going to drive down the cost because non-market housing is non-market housing. That doesn't change, and neither does market housing. I think, I think point made. We had that little bit of discussion, and they're kind of, well, yeah, I can kind of see that and stuff like that. I said, well, you're in the real estate business. You know that market housing is market driven. So thank you for coming out here today, here on February the 2nd. Temperatures are bitter out there today. I mean, they got a little bit better than what they were this morning, but, here we are in the dead of winter. Here in Ontario, here in the Maritimes, and right down there in Pennsylvania, you know, uh, down there in Pennsylvania, they have a groundhog that predicts whether it's going to be 6 more weeks of winter or an early spring. Here in Ontario, the same thing, and they have Lucy the lobster in the Maritimes that predicts whether it's going to be 6 more weeks of winter or an early spring. So Lucy the lobster and Wyerton Willie here in Ontario predicted a early spring, and the little varmint down there in Pennsylvania said 6 more weeks of winter. So I would take the two that it'll be an early spring. We keep our fingers crossed for that because it has been a nasty winter. So next time we get out here and talk, hope to see you. If this is your first time, thank you for joining us. If you've been here before, welcome back. This is the North Affair Conversations Without Barriers. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. Take care and thank you.